podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
No breaks. No breaks. No fear. No fear. The official British Speedway podcast.
Welcome along, I'm Ian Brannan. It has of course been an unusual week in all of our lives, and for British Speedway that has been no different. The sport coming to a standstill over the course of last weekend as British Speedway paid its respects to Queen Elizabeth II and of course to the royal family. Racing was due to resume on Monday, but weather put paid to that, as it did on Tuesday. So the next Speedway will be Wednesday as the Championship playoffs get underway. Premiership playoffs are not far away as well. And we have the Sports Insure 2022 British Final taking place on Sunday at the National Speedway Stadium. So still a very big week in Speedway as we head into this period. We've got someone who operates at the very top table of British Speedway, Damien Bates, a BSPL Board Director and of course co-promoter at not just the Sheffield Tigers but the Leicester Lions as well. And he's here to talk to us about those two clubs, about the British Final, and also how British Speedway might look as we head in towards 2023 as supporters, riders and promoters start to glance an eye to the new year. All of this on the way on No Breaks, No Fear.
No breaks, no fear. The official British Speedway podcast.
So we're going to have a British champion crowned on Sunday. The playoffs are underway in the Championship this week, hopefully, weather permitting. It looks good, though. It looks good. And in the Premiership, we know the four teams now who will be battling it out ultimately for the title at the end of the season. One of those teams is Sheffield, and I'm very pleased to say Sheffield co-promoter Damien Bates joins us this week on No Breaks, No Fear. Hi, Damien.
Hi, Ian. Good to be here.
Well, thanks for joining us. I know it's a busy time for you. We'll cover off the British Final fairly soon. We'll have a chat about Speedway in general, I think, and looking ahead to next season. And first of all, though, let's talk about Sheffield because it's been a bit of a stop-start situation through the course of the year with one thing and another. But Sheffield in the playoffs right now and aiming for top spot in the league as it stands.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a stop-start season with fixtures at Sheffield this year, which some's forced by weather, as always. We had a couple of issues with stadium because they had to relay a new dog track, which I knew were happening, but it's been a bit hit and miss, and we haven't really got into a rhythm that I feel all year. But like I said, we're second in the league. If we win as I think we've got to win two more, and then we'll finish top at league, which was aimed to start with. So I'm happy. I'm happy as we are now.
And you've still got to face Bellevue, of course, and that's really going to decide probably who could finish top. It's not in Ipswich's hands anymore as it stands. So there will be a winner that night because there's no draws in the Premiership this season. So. That'll be a big one, won't it? The Roses Derby, if it didn't have enough riding on it already to have potentially top of the table riding on it by the time you race.
It's always a big one with Bellevue. Bellevue can quite easily win, but also we could quite easily win against Bellevue. You know, it's one of them meetings where you never know quite what's going to happen. Bellevue's packed full of great riders. A couple. The riders who do ride our track really well, a couple not so much on previous meetings, but you never know. We just need to win both his next meetings and we'll finish top. I think I'm more than confident we can do that.
Of course, this coming Monday next week, the 19th of September, out of respect for the royal family, there's no fixtures being raced, and I think many people will understand that. Many supermarkets are going to be closing. Some holiday parks are even shutting down for the day as well. And of course, this is the first time this sort of event has happened in all of our lifetimes. It will be a major event. It does mean, as far as fixtures in Speedway in the grand scheme of things are concerned, there will be a couple of fixtures that are outstanding after the cut-off point, though. The four teams that are going to be in the playoffs are obviously assured. We know who those four are. So obviously it was a difficult one to work out what to do. Was there ever a conversation where you might have put the cut-off date back, or because the four teams are the four teams and that's all decided, you're just sticking with the cut-off there now?
We had a discussion. Obviously, what happens is a great tragedy, and I think it's only right that Speedway doesn't run on Monday out of respect. Obviously, it does cause a few issues with a couple of clubs that are racing, but I think in grand scheme of things, there's some things more important. We decided that we'll just carry on with us cut off as it is. Obviously, we've got TV scheduling. We spoke with Eurosport. They've been great with stuff, but the top four was the top four, so we just felt like we just need to, later we leave it, the weather gets worse. So realistically, we just needed to crack on and do as we are now, and just get straight into playoffs.
From some fans' point of view, they'll look at the Premiership and they'll say, well, there's 6 teams. How are we in a position where potentially, we're getting on into October before things are going to be decided, and with weather, it could be the back end of October. Was there, or is there maybe an argument for starting league fixtures earlier in the campaign? Because, of course, the Premiership itself didn't get underway till May this year.
No, we had the League Cup competition, which... When we do those fixtures, look at those fixtures, we thought that would be okay. Which, things don't always work out. I think it's just something we need to look at next year to try and probably make the league, which I think the league will start earlier. We've obviously lose a date for British Final, which is on Monday. We lost a week for Speedway Nations. And there's a few other factors why obviously it's running a bit late, but the cut-off date the playoffs are always penciled in from the beginning. It's just a bit unfortunate that there's going to be odd 1 or 2 meetings not complete. Due to this one is obviously a circumstance that we can't control, and like I said before, it's respect to the Queen really why we're not running it.
The fixtures will be run, I gather, but obviously just not affecting the final scheme of things in the league table as far as who races who in the playoffs. Sheffield, as we know, are now one of those teams that will be battling it out. You got one eye on those fixtures becoming apparent now, starting off this week when you're racing against Kings Lynn at home at Owlerton to take a step towards getting to the top of the table, which is where Sheffield could finish. And what are your thoughts on the playoffs then? Have you got a team in mind that you'd rather face, or are you just going to see how it pans out and who you end up with?
No, you'll always find a club where you think, well, I fancy them a bit more. But like you've touched on, you've got to race everybody. So and it's not easy. But I do fancy his chances. I think we're riding well at the moment. We've got Toby in at number 1, who's doing a cracking job at number 1. So it's not like we've lost Jack from number 1, and Toby's doing equally, if not better, better job at the moment. So. Yeah, I'm confident. I'm confident against anybody who we go against. It's always difficult to go to Bellevue. Their lads are pretty dialed in around that track, and it's it's a fast track, and they know what lines to ride, where to ride, and what to do. But I feel if we've got a 12-14 point lead from a home fixture, which I think we can do against any of the other 3, I think we should be there or thereabouts. But you really cannot rule one of the 4 clubs out equally all as good.
Sheffield booking their place in the playoffs then at the expense of Kings Lynn, with their slim hopes ended after Sheffield defeated Wolves. Let's hear from the Wolves team manager, Peter Adams, somebody who's got a lot of experience when it comes to the playoffs. And he fancies his side's chances, of course, but particularly buoyed by that performance that they had on Bank Holiday Monday, home and away against Bellevue.
Yeah, I thought they were terrific in the 2 matches against Bellevue. Tremendous fighting spirit. The difference, of course, is what our reserves contribute, as it's been, all season long. If they both fire on, as they did on Monday, then we're a difficult team to beat. But we come here tonight. Leon started well, but ran out of steam. Drew was, not competitive at all. So that is reflected in the scoreline, and we can only hope that in the important matches ahead, if we're going to be in them, that they have the kind of day that they had on Monday. If they do, then we're going to be very much in the running.
Yep, definitely. Finally, a word on Leon Flint as well. Obviously, he came in as the rising star when Tom Bacon retired last season. We've certainly seen him make some steps in the right direction in the Premiership, and 2 great individual achievements over the past month for him.
Yeah, fabulous, and when the British Final eventually rolls round, maybe he can give a respectable performance in that as well. But he's a young lad, his career's developing, and hopefully he'll be with us for many years to come.
Yeah, Leon Flint, and that interview was recorded before Leon had won the British Under-21 title. And last week we had Leon's dad on, Gary Flint, team manager and co-promoter at the Berwick Bandits as well. So if you've not heard last week's episode yet, give that a listen. Damien Bates, the Sheffield co-promoter and Leicester Lions co-promoter as well, is with us this week. And Peter Adams there, a lot of experience of the playoffs, Damien. But when it comes to the playoffs, it ultimately boils down to these, one-off matches. Of course, there's a home and away leg, but simple things could really fire your season in one way or another, couldn't they? And it could be as simple as a crash. It could be somebody breaking the tapes, machine failure. For either side, these little things start counting now.
It could be anything from being on 5-1 and somebody breaks down in front, goes to a 3-3, and then it could set tone for meeting, or that extra couple of points could have mattered. It's just where you take it each race as it come when you get to playoffs. Try and get the advantages and just keep going and move on to the next race when the other one's done. Don't dwell on it and just see where it takes you, really.
Well, earlier on, I spoke to the Ipswich co-promoter, Chris Louis, about the Witches' season so far, and the fact, of course, that they've been top of the table for much of the season, but now are looking over their shoulder at the sides with still some matches in hand, particularly Sheffield and Bellevue, and wondering if they will remain top of the table come the end of the season. It's getting close at the top. Here's Chris Louis.
Yeah, you're right. It's a long season to come down to a couple of semi-finals and then obviously a final. Look, we've had a great year. We've served up some great entertainment. The team have been fantastic. They've never known when they're beaten, both home and away, and I've enjoyed that. But we've sat top of the table for the majority of the season. But you can't read anything into that because at the end of the day, by the time we get to the final league day on the 22nd of September, I don't think there'll be anything between certainly the top 3 sides, and Wolverhampton really not very far behind. So it's going to be really interesting playoff times because, as I said, I can't pick it. I don't think there's anything between these 4 sides.
Ipswich, of course, currently top of the table, and you've been there for much of the season, it seems. Got off to a great start, and the pack are closing in. Of course, Sheffield and Bellevue have got matches in hand and always had, particularly Sheffield, and they're coming up on the rails now. Are you looking over your shoulder as to how things might pan out and whether you can hold that top spot? Because, of course, depending where you finish, depends who you're going to race.
Yeah, absolutely, and obviously with their meetings in hand, they're just particularly Sheffield are in a strong position with home meetings to come. So, look, like everybody, like our fans, I guess we've been looking at the upcoming fixtures and who will beat who and where people are going to end up. And you've got to say Sheffield are in a strong position to possibly top the table come 22nd of September, which. If that were the case, would probably leave a Sheffield-Wolverhampton semi-final and a Bellevue-Ipswich semi-final, which, I've got to say, I don't think any of the other 3 teams probably wanted to go to Bellevue, but it doesn't hold a lot of fears for us. I mean, we had a disastrous meeting last time out in the National Speedway Stadium, but we had so many problems. Every rider experienced mechanical problems and issues, including Jason Doyle, and you don't very often see that. So, we didn't read a lot into that. The lads done a lot of testing in their last couple of races. So if we do end up going to Bellevue, then you've got to beat everybody. And if we knock them out in the semi-final stage, who knows? That might make the final easier, but not by very much.
Ipswich co-promoter and, you got to say, British Speedway legend Chris Louis with his thoughts on the upcoming playoffs. His side are currently top of the league, but looking over his shoulder to see what's going to happen. And the next fixtures that could have a bearing on that happen this Thursday. Peterborough versus Bellevue at the East of England Arena, and it's Sheffield versus Kings Lynn. Both of those getting underway at 7:30. The other Premiership meetings, of course, we've talked about on Monday next week will be postponed, and that would have been Kings Lynn, Bellevue and Sheffield versus Ipswich. And those meetings won't be able to get back in the calendar before the playoff cut-off dates. The following fixtures next week, which will be Thursday, September 22nd, Kings Lynn versus Wolverhampton and Sheffield versus Bellevue. And Sheffield's remaining fixtures, of course, are at home, and that's going to give them potentially that boost to grab top spot over to Sheffield and Bellevue to see who finishes top of the table. And it's Sheffield co-promoter Damien Bates. He's our guest this week on No Breaks, No Fear. And in the next part, we're starting the build-up to the 2022 Sports Insure British Final, which is back for a second running. The weather's going to be great at the National Speedway Stadium this weekend, so there'll be no problems on that front as far as we know, unless something changes radically. But we'll speak about the original staging, the conversations that happened that led to the events coming up this weekend, and Damien's preview as well of who to watch, because a quarter of the lineup are Sheffield riders. And probably, to be honest, the rest of the lineup have either ridden or guested for Sheffield at some point in the past anyway. So we'll talk about the British Final next on No Breaks, No Fear.
Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? You can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, but you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.
No Breaks, No Fear. The official British Speedway podcast.
Welcome back. I'm Ian Brannan, and our guest this week is the Sheffield Tigers co-promoter Damien Bates. And Damien also on the board of British Speedway Promoters Limited as well, one of the four key decision makers, I guess you'd say, in British Speedway. Coming up this weekend, the showpiece of British Speedway, the British Final, the Sports Insure British Final, taking place at the National Speedway Stadium Sunday afternoon, a 3:00 start. It will be on Eurosport as well, but of course there's nothing like the real thing, so if you can get yourself down to the National Speedway Stadium, you're going to be in for a treat, because it is an absolutely stunning lineup, pretty much the same lineup as the original staging. There's only one change, which we'll talk about shortly. But before we get onto the full lineup, let's just talk about the Sheffield representatives, and just shows what a spine of British talent Sheffield have got, Damien. Connor Mountain, Kyle Howarth, Lewis Kerr, Adam Ellis. I know it's four riders, but that's a quarter of the entire lineup for the British Final. And, you really have now got some of the best of British racing at Oleton.
Yeah, listen, it's always nice to have a spine of British riders, because, we are British League, and British riders are what makes us tick over, really. So it's nice to have a good few Brits in there. Louis come in, done a cracking job, to be fair, since he's come in, and I can't fault him one bit. His results, his races, if he's had a bad race, he listens to Steady helps him, listens, which is good. And you can see by that, especially at Sheffield, if it's a bad race, his next race has normally improved. So yeah, it's been really good that he's joined us.
On to the British Final itself, there's only one real change in the lineup, and it's former rider of yours. It's Craig Cook comes in place of Daniel Hume, who's currently out injured. But apart from that, it's the same 16 riders who are going to be lining up for that, including, of course, Dan Bewley, which is. I know that a lot of work has gone into making sure that was going to be possible, because of course he's riding the night before at Melilla in the Grand Prix in Sweden, then he's coming straight over for the British Final. But that'll be great to see him back in action, because he was very much in contention in the first running of things.
It was, yeah. Dan was keen to do British Final. which we loved Dan to be in British Final. We wanted him in British Final. We'd have liked Ty and Rob to be in it also, but obviously logistics didn't work out with them. So it's good to see Dan and doing restaging as well, which were always going to be a little bit difficult. But he's got to be favourite realistically. How he's riding at the moment, he's riding superb, like a different class. So I think he'll start off as favourite, but you never know with a British Final. You just never know. Anybody could pop out and win when it comes down to the final heat.
And we saw some terrific racing in the first staging of it, of course, before the weather moved in. Damien, take us back to the original staging, though, because it all started well. But then, of course, the rain came in. A lot's been made. Everybody's got their opinion, I'm sure, and I know many have probably been directed straight at you, being one of the figureheads of British Speedway, and people with their advice on what they would have done or whatever. But really, this situation was fairly unique. It sort of fell between the cracks of the rules, and you can't invent a rule once a meeting has begun. There were those discussions in the changing rooms with the riders and officials, of course. Let us into some of the conversations that happened there. What was the thinking? What were the discussions with the riders that led to ultimately this restaging this weekend?
Yeah, well, listen, I've seen some rumours and some names that people decide to call me and stuff, which I just laugh about because, certain people and certain Speedway fans have the opinion of that. They know everything and they know everything that's gone on, but the only person who really went off and knows that rule was myself, Rob, Tony Steele and riders. Obviously the meeting was run under SCB regulations, which are British Speedway is. Referee, I think it was Wayne Jarvis, and Tony Steele was there. So it was a case the rain come. We knew the rain was coming, but we thought it was going to be a little bit later, so we thought we could get through it. And Sport were aware of that. Sport wanted to show it, so we tried to get it on. And as it happened, I think there were after 3 rides, we could have called it. There were 3 riders on 8, but none of them had, I believe, rode each other. So there were a few grey areas, but almost every rider, I think there were 14 out of 16 riders wanted restaging. And normally it's myself and Rob won't normally get into that because it's an SCB regulated meeting. Riders want to speak to me and Rob. We went and spoke to them, which were okay, it were good. They asked if it to be restaged, so we agreed. Which it could be a massive cost to us to restage it, but we felt it all right. And so every rider had opportunity because there were quite a few on the 6-7 points. They all felt they could win it, get to the final. So we agreed to it. Like I said, I think it was 14 out of 16 riders wanted. So we just decided, yeah, let's do it. Riders want it. We think it's the right thing to do. We don't want to shortchange anybody. We don't, we want to see a British final and a winner of a full meeting. So I think it was the right decision to do. It was very, what's the word? It was a decision that we're trying to get rushed and not thought about. That's why we spent a little bit of time talking and thinking about it and making sure it was right before any decision were announced or made.
And of course, there wasn't just the decision on the British Championship itself, which is the main point of being there. That is the big prize. I think for some fans as well, that thing about the wild card for Cardiff comes up, and perhaps for some people that is as important, or if not more important sometimes. That was sorted out. Adam Ellis got the wild card, being the reigning champion. Tell us about that angle as well. And as far as I know, this time on Sunday it will be purely for the British title. Is that the case? And it will have no bearing on the 2023 Speedway Grand Prix?
That's the thing with wildcard. Everybody thinks that. It made me laugh that I did read and I sent a few things saying that I'd done this so Adam Ellis, my Sheffield rider, would go to Cardiff as wildcard, which is just absolutely mental. What it actually is, the FIM picked the wildcards, and the FIM's decision is to have the British champion. So before that was announced also, a discussion had to be made with the FIM on using the current British champion. They could have easily said no. It's their choice. It's not my choice. It's not Rob Godfrey's choice or Board's choice. It's the FIM's. They have the wild card is a British champion. We didn't have a British champion, so the only thing was to use the current British champion, who was Adam, and he didn't get his chance last year. So they felt it right. We felt it right that Adam got his chance this year. This year they'll be racing for British champions, for British Championship as it stands. But we are just in discussions about looking at something potentially for Cardiff if somebody does win it, who's not in it. But that's early days, and don't know how that's going to pan out. But purely for British champion this time, yeah.
That's not the only silverware to be won, though, is it? Because British Speedway is going to be honouring legendary broadcaster and a great friend of mine personally, and also I know of yours, Damien, as well, Nigel Pearson, at the Sports Insure British Final Championship. And supporters are going to be given the chance to vote for the winner of the inaugural Nigel Pearson Award, which will be presented to the rider after the meeting, who is judged to have provided the most entertainment. It's a terrific way to remember Nigel. He would have loved this kind of thing. You know, Adam Ellis with the tassels on his on his Kevlars, I think, for a great example of the sort of thing that he would have loved, but something different and rewarding the entertainment, if not the performance.
Yeah, and I think everybody would want to have that award, because Nigel has a place in everybody's heart in Speedway. I don't think there were many bad words to say Nigel. Like I said, I'm really good friends with Nigel, and to have just, even if it's like a little award, entertainment rider, it just honours him, which I think we can't forget Nigel. We won't ever forget Nigel. So this is just something just to keep his name and spirit alive in Speedway, because it's deserved for what he's done and what he did do for us all, because, you know, he's massively missed, believe me, in a lot of things. Not just Speedway terms, but missed as a good gentleman, nice bloke, everything. He's just, you know, as Kelvin said, he was top drawer, Nigel. So, you know, this award is just something just to keep his name in Speedway, because he deserves it.
Yeah, and this is going to be happening after the meeting. It'll be a Twitter poll, won't it? Where people can vote. There'll be 4 candidates nominated, and supporters can then vote. Having watched the racing in the afternoon on the TV or in person, and you can vote for your most entertaining rider. And what do they get? They get, is it a trophy, or what's the award?
I think it's just it's a little trophy. Oh, it's a trophy. Like I said, Nigel Pearson trophy. It's just somebody who's put you. It might not be somebody who's won it. It might be somebody who's come stone last, but he's entertained. He's made people get off the seat. He's made people. They've made the fans go shout at the TV screens or shout. Just a bit of entertainment. It's not necessarily who's going to win the meeting. It could be, because they could be entertaining, but it's just for the entertainer. So, you know, the entertainer award from the entertaining man himself, which for Nigel.
The British Final has produced some great moments for entertainment that we can recall. The late Danny Ayres being one, Chris Harris, of course, with his battle as well, and you know, we have had some great moments, and that's the kind of thing that we're looking for this Sunday afternoon, and the conditions are going to be perfect, so we'll look forward to it.
Yeah, listen, there's plenty. If you say Chris Harris, when Chris is in any lineup, any team, you're guaranteed entertainment, because that's what Chris does, and that's why I think everyone loves Chris. He's pure entertainment, and he never gives in. But there's plenty of other riders, I'm sure, that'll be wanting to collect the award as well.
Damien Bates, co-promoter at Sheffield Speedway and one of the board directors of British Speedway Promoters Limited, our guest this week on No Breaks, No Fear. But what about the future of Speedway? How's 2023 maybe shaping up, and what can we expect, and what goes into planning for the new season? How does it all work? These are the questions we're going to be looking at next on No Brakes, No Fear.
No Brakes, No Fear. The official British Speedway podcast.
Welcome back. I'm Ian Brannan. Our guest this week is Damien Bates, co-promoter at Sheffield Speedway, but also one of the board directors at British Speedway Promoters Limited, who oversee British Speedway's running of the promotion of the sports and the running of the individual clubs. And it's that time of year now, Damien, where eyes are starting to look towards 2023, both from the clubs and for the riders as well. And of course, fans, not least, keen to know how things are going to shape up. How do you think British Speedway might look in 2023? What's your hunch? And talk us through the process of how things work at this stage of the season now, looking ahead to next year.
As years gone by, we normally have an AGM over 3 days. In November we normally get discussed and sorted out with a few previous meetings before. But what we're doing this year is we're having meetings. We've had a couple of short meetings start with both leagues and just discussions what's wrong, what's right, what we can do. But the discussions and meetings are going to be taking place over the next few weeks. So I don't know how it's going to look. There's obviously going to be maybe like last year Championship lost Newcastle. I don't believe that there's going to be anybody to replace Newcastle, so that'll probably go as a team that's there unless something comes out of blue. The Premiership is at the moment 6 teams. We was as Premiership, we were hoping Swindon would make a return. So it's just ongoing at the moment, and realistically, until these meetings have been held, it's pretty much as we are now. We haven't really gone into discussions for next year. Really, not mega amounts anyway.
We have had some teams, though, obviously declare their intentions and get maybe ahead early on some. Like, for example, Birmingham have come out and been quite clear about their intentions for next year. We have issues, I suppose, with clubs like, say, Edinburgh at the moment, and obviously best wishes to them because they're in a state of flux as it stands. We'll get an update, I'm sure, on where they're at soon enough. But I think for riders, we're starting to see riders increasingly wanting to sort their plans out earlier because I suppose Poland, Sweden are getting ahead of the game now earlier and earlier and earlier. And I suppose the traditional system of, as you mentioned, having an AGM in November, and maybe that's starting to get a little bit later, isn't it now, with riders wanting to get sorted earlier? Yeah,
that has always been a bit of an issue, especially over the last few years with rules set that's in Poland and other countries. So that's why we decided to bring everything forward, so we can at least, we all know where we're going, we all know what we can do. We haven't got to rely on ringing people in Australia, America in the middle of the night just to get hold of them to sign for them. We can hopefully get stuff done before to go home or verbally or a few riders. So it is important that we do bring it forward because we can't, as a nation, we can't get left behind Poland and Sweden, which Poland's got all the top riders, we all know that, and herself and Sweden seem to battle it out for the same riders, which sometimes is easy, sometimes it's hard. So if we get all those ducks in a row now, we should be able to start looking at how we can improve or make team changes and make teams a bit earlier for 2023. And you've got one of the riders that is riding in Poland, in Jack Holder. What are negotiations like with the Polish authorities? Because of course it is a question that fans ask regularly about why aren't riders able to come over here? What are the restrictions, and are the restrictions foreseeably maybe going to ease? Or there's also a rumour that they might get worse. How do you see it panning out? The thing is, there's obviously the heads of each federation, the ISLB group, which has got every nation in it. Alex Arcus is the for us, for the BSPL and ACU and Tony Steele, but also with Rob. He goes to meetings, and then there's a couple from each federation. They discuss what they want to do, what they don't want to do. So it is an ongoing yearly thing where they talk throughout the year. But Poland, I do get it with them. They do pay a hell of a lot of money out, and they want the best riders. We all want best riders. Poland's got a massive TV deal, which helps boost their finances to bring these riders in. So it is difficult, but it's not just as simple as phoning PZM up or Extra League and say, what you're doing, can we have this rider, can we have that rider? I wish it were that simple, but it's not. It's pretty hard going, and negotiations are ongoing as we speak.
Okay, watch this space on that one. We've been talking about Sheffield, but of course you've also got involvement, family involvement as well with Leicester, and they having a bit of a quiet period at this moment in time, but they'll be getting back into things in the Championship very, very soon, because they won the league and they get the pick of who they face in the semi-finals. So all going well in that league as well. Yeah, it's going great at Leicester. It's just a shame that we've had no fixtures. The Summer Jubilee Trophy, we've got that final which we tried getting in, but other two teams weren't available on certain dates, which made it difficult. So it has been a bit quiet, but we've got semi-final at Cup, Knockout Cup this weekend against Poole, which should be a great meeting. Poole's always great entertainment. And then we'll just hopefully then ease into playoffs if weather's kind, and I see Plymouth's off again tonight, so that's just delaying things further and further. But we're itching to go to get lads back on track down at Leicester. Yeah, I was supposed to be doing this from Plymouth, and I got 50 miles down the road this time. At least I didn't get the full 400, unlike last time. But they're racing next Tuesday. But I think the Poole match, which for now what was the second leg now becomes the first leg on the Wednesday. I think that the weather looks pretty good for that, and I think Edinburgh and Redcar are going to get theirs sorted on Friday and Saturday. I can't see any problems there. So potentially, I don't know where Stuart Dixon's thinking is. He's a man who knows his mind, as we well know. He will know in his mind, I think, who he fancies. But maybe you might have an opponent to pick from by the weekend. Honestly, it's obviously we'll have that conversation with Stuart when we know who it's going to be, and Stuart will talk to riders. He'll have an idea, like I have an idea. But you never know, anything can happen in Speedway. You never know what club's going to get through. So, like I say, I think we'll have a good idea at weekend. We'll probably have a chat with it Saturday before meeting against Poole. Who we're fancying, who we're going to take. And I guess, from a promoter or a manager's point of view, Plymouth one to watch, because they are a bit of an unknown quantity. Of course, they've been hit heavily by injuries, and as a result, their team is very different from day to day, week to week. Of course, with the way that the rules work and also who's available. And we saw how last week, the side that they were about to take into battle against Poole was a team of reserves at best, and some National League riders in there as well, whereas the rain came and saved them, and now they've got a much more competitive team for the upcoming fixtures. It is hard to say, and Plymouth's been like that obviously most of the year. They lost Eddie Kennett in first meeting, I think a couple of races in, and they've obviously had a facility for him all year, which has obviously benefited them. Let's not hide that fact. I think it's benefited them, but I feel it will be harder for them to pick guests now, because you only can pick who's not in the playoffs, so that limits them with averages. So you never know with Plymouth. They could put a good team out, they could put an average team out. I have no clue. But I think either way, I know Gary May pretty well, and Gary will make sure that whoever's riding for him, he'll be determined to put one over Poole to start with,
and Gary will want to get to that final, no two ways about it.
Yeah, that thunderstorm that rolled in, an hour before, they're just about to open the gates at Poole last Wednesday, and this thunderstorm that wasn't forecast rolled in an hour before the start time, and I think Gary May and Mark Phillips thought that their prayers had perhaps been answered.
probably doing rain dances outside.
It certainly worked anyway. And the other tournament, of course, which has been new this year, is the Premiership Pairs, which has had a bit of a break now with one thing and another, and the most recent rain-off being on Monday. But we've got dates in the calendar now to get that finished as well at the back end of October. So we're going to have two meetings at one at Sheffield and one at Bellevue in that week. I think it's the 24th of October, isn't it? The last full week of October to try and get that finished.
Yeah, the Premiership Pairs, but it's something we all, as a league, decided on we wanted to do the competition. We looked at riders who we had in his teams available, and there's some pretty attractive lineups when you put them in, like with Jason Doyle's and Ipswich, like Danny King or Troy Batchelor. And I've got like Jack Holder and Toby, and you look at them, there's Bellevue, Max Frick-Zager. So we thought, this could be a good competition to have. I think it has been a good competition. I'm not 100% sure if fans are sold on it, because I do believe that some attendances haven't been compared to league meetings, whether that's just people just picking and choosing due to cost of living, which I understand. But we believed in it, we still believe in it. I think it has been a good competition. It's just how we take it forward next year, and do we do stuff different? Do we look at different sort of things for it? Again, that will be discussed in close season.
I know from speaking to Steady, I think he'd prefer more points for finishing second and getting to the final. That'd help Sheffield, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, it's the point system was, we had to obviously work out a point system where we kept it entertaining all the way through, which we thought, because last time we wanted 3 or 4 rounds in, and everybody, last couple of meetings, there's no on it because somebody's won. So maybe there's things like that will be discussed again, because we just don't want to bin it off. We want to try and progress it and keep it going year on year on year, and make it better. So yeah, it's first season. There's always going to be mistakes and everything. It's just correcting the mistakes, and just trying to make it a bit better for fans and for clubs involved, really.
There have been some great heats of speedway through the Premiership Pairs so far, at all of the tracks as well. We've had great racing at Peterborough. I remember Chris Harris flying round there with Michael Palm-Toft and some great battles. I think it was against Bellevue. And the Bellevue riders are putting some great performances. Particularly, I think there was some close racing at Kings Lynn for them, and they had some good battles at Wolves as well, even though Wolves are not necessarily have not really been at the races as far as the Premiership Pairs are concerned. They've certainly contributed with some great heats of speedway to watch, and some great examples of team riding on show. The best, of course, from Jason Doyle, and that's possibly why they're top of the table.
Yeah, the riders obviously riding it are top riders and good riders, so it were always going to be good racing, especially on, every track in top league does produce good racing for different ways, it's got different shapes and size tracks. But look at Bellevue, Sheffield, Peterborough, which is the big fast tracks, you're always guaranteed passing. Wolverhampton's and Ipswich technical tracks, but when you get dialed in there, it's to pass around there is quite spectacular, and to watch is good. So, and same with Kings Lynn, there's plenty of passes. So I think they're always going to be scope for passing and good close meetings with the tracks that are in Premiership. So no, I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the series. I think it can go from strength to strength.
And I think it would be good to complete it, because that was the other thing as well, where every team had their home advantage. I think you could have these tournaments on any track, and there'll always be somebody who says, well, that's not fair because that favours this rider or that rider. And it did give everybody, on balance, a similar experience, because the home team always rode in the same position in the order as well. So over the course of the 6 rounds, it should all pan out.
Yeah, I think there's only Ipswich won their home leg, I believe. So it is very open, and Ipswich, I believe, are 12 points in front. So all they need to have is a bad round at Sheffield. Sheffield or Kings Lynn have a good round, and then it's wide open at Bellevue, which should make a quite spectacular finish to it. That's what we're hoping for, and it does look like we could end up with that, really.
Well, that's Damien Bates, co-promoter of Sheffield Speedway and the Leicester Lions and Leicester Lion Cubs, and also board director at the BSPL British Speedway Promoters Limited. And let's have a look before we go at the fixtures coming your way across British Speedway through the course of this week. We're recording this on Tuesday. We should have been at Plymouth, but that match against Poole was cancelled, so that will be rerun next Tuesday to help sort out the championship playoffs, which at the moment of recording this are still to get underway, but they should be getting underway at Poole Stadium on Wednesday, September 14th, when it's Poole versus Plymouth. Was the second leg, now the first leg at Poole Stadium. Also happening is the restaging of Birmingham versus Cradley, which is the Alan Graham Memorial meeting, which has got a great lineup in itself, and that's taking place at Perry Bar 7:30. Looking ahead to Thursday in the Premiership, it's Peterborough versus Bellevue, Sheffield versus Kings Lynn. On Friday, we are back to Championship playoff action, the other quarter-final, which is between the Edinburgh Monarchs and the Redcar Bears at Armadale at 7:30pm. And then on Saturday, we've got the return of that fixture, Redcar versus Edinburgh, and that will be at the Echo Arena on Teesside at 5pm. A 5 o'clock start for that. Do not be late. Middlesbrough Football Club are playing at the same time, well, in the evening at 7:45, I think. So that's why it's starting earlier at 5 o'clock for Redcar versus Edinburgh. It's also the same evening for Leicester versus Poole in the Championship Knockout Cup semi-final. That one gets underway at 7. And of course, we've got Speedway Grand Prix action at Melilla on Saturday night as well. Sunday, well, of course, the big fixture, the one we've been talking about, it's the Sports Insure British Final, the restaging of that at the National Speedway Stadium, Bellevue, a 3 o'clock start time. And we've got action at Kent, where Kent take on the Bellevue Colts in the National League at 12, followed by a couple of rounds of the British Youth Championships. We've got Class A and Class B of the 125cc's racing there. No Speedway across Britain on Monday, of course, as a mark of respect for the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. And then on Tuesday, we're back in action in the Championship playoffs. Hopefully, the quarterfinals will be sorted on Tuesday evening when the Plymouth Gladiators host the Poole Pirates. It's been a long time coming, but we're hoping that we do get there third time lucky this time on Tuesday, September 20th. And we'll be back with the next episode of No Breaks, No Fear. From there, all being well, next Tuesday. So that brings you up to date with how things are looking across the week ahead. A couple of other things to look out for. Don't forget to check out our previous episodes, because we've got loads of great guests for you to listen to. Not least last week, fascinating episode, and thanks to everybody who got in touch and to say they enjoyed it. Hearing Gary Flint talking about Leon's career. From his position, of course, of being Leon's dad, and also Neil Vatcher talking about the youth series and how the youth programme is working in Great Britain and bringing through the next batch of riders, I suppose, because Neil Vatcher's been in the job for over 10 years now, and his first products off that line are names such as Dan Bewley and Robert Lambert, and of course Tom Brennan and Leon Flint are now heading into that kind of orbit, all being well. And who's behind them? Who are the names to look out for? Find out in last week's episode. And speaking of Dan Bewley, he recently appeared with Kelvin Tatum on his new podcast, Tatum Talks, an hour-long chat with Dan Bewley, available there. Just search for that on any podcast app, or indeed YouTube. You can see it for yourself. And we'll be back next week on No Breaks, No Fear. Have a great week in Speedway, and we'll be back with you next Wednesday.
No Breaks, No Fear. The official British Speedway podcast.
Sports Social Podcast Network.